welcome to my channel. Welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be 3 looks and a first impressions on the Blend Bunny Longing palette. This is my first Blend Bunny palette. I am so excited to be testing it out. I finally found a color story that I was a little bit more interested in, that was a little bit more up my alley. So in today's video, I'll be talking about the details of this palette, doing 3 looks, testing it out, see what I think of the formula, and then just giving my thoughts on that. So if that sounds good to you, if you like eyeshadow palette videos, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I would love it if you stuck around. But with all that, let's just get started talking about the details and the swatches of this palette. All right, I don't want to linger too long because the eye looks tend to take up the bulk of this video, but I have had Blend Bunny on my list forever. Everyone talks about how great their formula is, but they tend to have a little bit more colorful palettes, and I like neutral palettes, neutral with a twist. I'm not so much into the primary rainbow palettes. So when this palette came out, I hemmed and hawed about it because I was a little bit nervous, and I'm going to show you why. I like the mutedness of this palette, but I was a little nervous about this deep row in particular and how dark and smoky it was. I decided ultimately to take a chance with this palette. I saw Brittany Ray's review on this palette. I'll link her channel and that video down below. But I decided to take a chance. So here we are, my very first Blend Bunny palette. I'm very excited to be testing it out. Now I'm going to insert in my swatches here. This does retail for $42 US. I don't think that's that bad for an indie palette. Yes, you are getting primarily mattes, and it's the shimmers that are expensive. So this is 24 shades. You have 6 shimmers out of those 24 shades, so 18 mattes. And I haven't done any eye looks yet. I kind of wanted to do my intro before doing the eye looks to really keep the suspense, I guess, and not know my thoughts yet. But I am still, after swatching this, a little nervous about the dark row. I'm just not seeing that much difference in the tones. It's not that I can't see the difference in the tones. That's why I'm hesitating on saying that. But I'm a little nervous to see on the eyes if you can really see the difference in the tones on the eyes versus just a swatch. And they also swatched very heavily pigmented. So I tend to prefer a buildable matte. That's just what works for me as a novice eyeshadow person. So we're gonna test this out, but that's all the details on this. I'm not gonna linger too long. I think now I am just gonna zoom you in and we're gonna get to the first look. Now, as much as I would like to try every single shade in this palette for the 3 looks, I just don't think that's going to be possible. I will, of course, be testing this palette more and coming back doing a palette ranking with all the palettes that I've recently done first impressions on. But for the first look, I want to go a little softer. We're not going to go, right out the gate with a deep, dark, smoky look. I 100% want to use this Love Letters. That was my favorite shimmer when swatching this palette. So I'm going to kind of stick to the purple themes, kind of go with the lilac shirt here, and more go in with these tones, maybe pull in some of these more neutrally browns and see how that kind of turns out. So let's just get started here. I think I'm gonna start with Sonder and just see how this matte performs. This is kind of like a browny gray, and I just want to see like what I'm working with. I'm just gonna put that in my transition crease. Now I don't have any eyeshadow primer on. I just kind of used my foundation and then set that down with my under eye concealer powder, my translucent powder. Okay, it doesn't seem as scary and pigmented off the bat. Now I am using like a fluffier brush, nothing too dense. I want to give myself as many advantages as I can, but it's performing a lot more subdued than I was anticipating. So we're off to a good start. I think now I'm gonna go into pleating, kind of like this muted lavender. Honestly, this shade right here, this is my favorite shade of purple, like this gray toned purple. That is my favorite color. So I'm gonna kind of really contour my lid and put that right in like my eye socket. I'm not gonna blend it out too much because I want that definition. And then I'm gonna go back in with that fluffy brush and on the edges, blend it out, no additional product. Either I'm not as bad at eyeshadow as I think I am, or this is a really nice formula and I can see what everyone's talking about. They just really like mesh and blend into each other while keeping that definition. Now I do want to do a little bit of depth. So for that, let's use Take Me Back. And I'm gonna very lightly just put a little bit on the corner of my brush. And see, like, even that's enough. So I'm gonna kind of wipe my brush off on my cloth to get the pigment off and then go in and blend it. It seems to me, only using the 3 shades, that they're pigmented mattes, but they spread really nicely. So there we go. I mean, that's a very, very light application. That pleating shade was already kind of deep for me, so I really didn't want to put too much on there. We're gonna go with that. Now for love letters, I'm just debating if I want to use a glitter glue or not. I think for this look, I'm not going to. I'm just gonna go in with my brush and see how it applies without the glitter glue. And I'm really gonna put this all over the lid. This is like the most pretty, it has like a very translucent base, but still has some pigment and shifts from like a purple to blue. It is so pretty, and then it just has like that sparkle, and I felt the fallout. I don't see the fallout, but I felt it. So maybe I do need to use a glitter glue. The reason I don't love using a glitter glue all the time is honestly, like, I kind of like the sheer wash, especially with a more translucent base. I want that where if you use a glitter glue, like, yes, you're gonna get less fallout, but it's gonna be more impactful. So it's really gonna pull the base color out and not give you kind of like that sheer translucency, which I just find really pretty. But this is what it's looking like so far. I am gonna take all that's left. It seems to be in my swatch like a very translucent based silver almost. I'm gonna pop that in the inner corner. And then we will work on the lower lash line. That is so pretty. At least, you know, with this palette being majority mattes, like, at least the shimmers just seem to be really outstanding. They're not just some boring shimmers, if you can have boring shimmers, but they're very unique, impactful, well thought out shimmers, I feel like. Now for the lower lash line, I'm gonna take pleating and I'm gonna just put that in the outer corner just a little bit. And then I'm gonna take that first shade, Sonder, that I used as my first transition. I'm gonna use that to blend it out. That way it's nothing too deep and dark. Like I said, I wanted to see how light I could use this palette to begin with. And then lastly, I'm gonna go back in with Sonder and just blend out the edges a little bit more. I kind of just wanna pull that pigment lightly a little bit higher. That's just a personal preference. And it also will kind of sheer it out a little bit more. I think that's good. All right, so I'm gonna go do the other eye off camera, apply liner and mascara, and I'll be back to show you the finished first look. All right, and then here is the finished first look. I did kind of just add a smoky-ish black liner baby wing type situation, just to add a little bit more definition because I felt like the lid was a little bit too bare. But I quite like this first look. The shimmer is everything. I mean, the formula is working really well. I have some thoughts so far. I'm going to save them until the end, at least try to, because I always say that and then I can't help myself. But let me send you over to look number 2. Time to do the second look. I think for the second look, I'm going to play more with the blues here. And then the third look, I'm going to do something with the greens. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm going to play with Dear Diary, Old Photographs, and When It Rains. Those are going to be my 3 main ones. We'll just kind of see how this look leads me, like I always do. I'm going to start, though, with Dear Diary, since it's pretty muted light shade. And as always, kind of just add this in my transition. Now, this is pigmented. The Sonder shade, because it was a neutral, maybe kind of blended in with my skin tone. But this has some payoff. Okay. So, need to be a little bit careful with this. It's definitely showing up. So I'm just going to add a little bit, really blow it out. See how that goes. And then, of course, we're going to start with Old Photographs. I need the right brush. This is just my favorite outer corner brush. I don't know why, at least as of right now. It's a Sigma E27. I can just really like put it like this and then swipe. That's why I like it. I've been really enjoying that technique. So I have to make sure I use the right brush. We're just going to lightly add some definition and then take whatever extra product, use the tip of the brush rather than the side, and really put that in my socket because I like a kind of just receded eye look. Try and make my lids look a little bit less hooded. And then I'm just gonna lightly blend that out. This brush has no product on it. Now I am thinking that I want to apply glitter glue this time just to see how it works. For the first look, I said I felt the fallout, but it was one little fleck and I easily was able to get that off. So it was no big deal as far as fallout. I'm thinking that this is more gonna be about making the shimmer really impactful versus trying to eliminate any kind of fallout. I'm gonna go into When It Rains. And it picks up a lot on the brush there, like very thick swatch. Yeah, this is gonna be much more opaque and impactful with the glitter glue. And like, that's not a bad look. It's just not necessarily something I love to do. Since I like a shimmer all over the lid, I try to tone it down just a smidge. Like, I like the translucency of shimmers sometimes. But that's what it looks like. I mean, this is still a beautiful, beautiful shimmer. And for being blue, it's perfect. I am not necessarily the biggest blue shadow lover, but because it has like this hint of gray, it is stunning. I'm going to go in, just kind of blend that outer corner shade, which is Old Photographs, in with that When It Rains shimmer. This is so just, there's like this, longing is such the best word for it, because there is like this element of just sadness and beautifulness to this palette. I think they did a really good job matching the theming to the shadows. It's not like any kind of fall grungy palette that I'm used to seeing. There we go. And I'm gonna do the bottom lash line, just going back in with those 2 mattes. A little bit on the outer corner. I always start with the dark one, only because I add just a smidge And then I go in with the lighter transition and blend it out with that. And I kind of put it on the side of my brush, not the tip of the brush, and really kind of sweep it. That's just how I kind of like to do it. I think for this look, I'm gonna do more of a shadow liner instead of the black. I'll probably still tight line with black, but I don't think this needs a black wing like the first look did. And I almost forgot my inner corner highlight, so let me go back and do that. I'm still gonna use all that's left because I think it's the perfect inner corner shade. There we go. Awesome. And now for liner, this is what I'm talking about. Like some of these dark shades, specifically these, without my glasses, it's hard for me to tell the undertones. I think this one's more green and this one's more blue. And yes, I could swatch it, but they did kind of stain. Maybe this is a black. So I think I'll use Forlorn for my liner. And I'm just gonna lightly add some definition, mostly to the outer corner. I don't know if you can hear the roosters in the background. I'll find out when I edit, but they have just been non-stop these past couple days. I don't know what their deal is. I'm at my mom's farm currently for the time being, and all day long, they just yell and yell and yell. Ooh, just stabbed myself. Okay. All right, so that's what we're looking like. I am now gonna go finish the other eye off camera, add mascara, hopefully not stab myself, and show you the finished final look. Here's the second look completed. This shimmer is just making me wish there were more shimmers in this palette. This one and the last one, they are so pretty. It goes from like a blue to a gold. It's just, I mean, it just doesn't do it justice. And the mattes are just so complementary to the shimmers, but there's only 6 shimmers. I wish there were more. Anyways, this is the finished second look. I'm gonna send you off to the third and final look. Okay, the third look, I am excited. I think I'm going to use the greens like I kind of mentioned here. My only just wild card is if I want to use like the green shimmer and kind of make it matchy-matchy, or if I want to use this Remember shimmer, which is Calling My Name. It's kind of like a very cool tone silver. I was kind of thinking that the greens with the silver might be really pretty, but I don't know. I'm kind of liking this quad right here. I might just stick with that quad. Yeah, I'm boring, so I'm gonna stick with that quad. Let's go. So the first one I'm gonna go into is Whoa, in that quad there, and we're gonna place that in the transition. Still no eyeshadow primer, by the way, for any of these looks, just my foundation concealer with a translucent setting powder, which I like a translucent setting powder because it makes it a little bit lighter, typically less pigmented with shadows, and I don't want that really intense pigment off the bat like some people do. I want to be able to build it up. I think that's why, you know, some people prefer a more sticky primer so it can really stick. Not me. So I'm going to kind of just throw that in there. Go in with my Sigma in Misty Eyed. I did use my switch to just clean off all my brushes. Add this to the outer corner. I don't know. For that bottled up shade, it's not too dark, so I'm wondering if I should add some extra depth. We'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling after I blend out this shade, because this is looking pretty light. I really hope you can't hear the roosters. I know a lot of people watching don't like it when you talk about the background noise, but they are constant. They don't stop. I don't know what their deal is. I think I am going to go in with a little bit of Bottled Up and just very teeny tiny pinpoint that on the outer corner, mostly kind of just keeping it close to my lash line and just kind of doing like a very messy angle to add a little bit of kind of like that wing effect. Less of that V or like C, just like that. That'll help with the liner. I think I'll go in with Sorrow for the liner. So for the shimmer, I'm gonna skip glitter glue. Since this already has some pigment to it, I do want to kind of sheer it out. The shimmer is called If Only. And I want to keep it a wash of color if I can. I would use my fingers normally to kind of sheer it out more, but my nails are too long, which is great. I've been trying to grow my nails out, but it does make it hard when you like to apply shimmers with your fingers. That's really pretty. This is actually more of a subtle shimmer out of the ones I've tried so far. Not a bad thing. It has less of a flip, I guess. It's not that it's subtle. It has less of a flip than the other two. I'm gonna very lightly just deepen up the outer corner, go over that shimmer, really pick up that green, and then blend out the edges. No additional product on this brush. Of course, all that's left in the inner corner. This is one of my favorite shades, to be honest. I could even see this being really pretty all over the lid. I like it a lot. Now I just have the lower lash line to do. So I think I'm gonna keep it to the two light greens. I'm gonna go in with Misty Eyed and just do my normal technique here. Tiny bit on the outer corner, and then take Whoa, the really bright sage green, or bright for the palette, and use that to blend it out. Then, like I said, I'm going to go in with Sorrow and just line the upper lash line in the outer corner a little bit. Keep it nice and smudgy. And that's what I have so far. I don't know if it's my favorite of the three just yet, but I need to do the other eye first, add mascara, all that good stuff, and I'll be back to show you the final look. I've finished up the other eye, so here is the final look. I don't love it as much as the first and second look, but that's just like a personal color story preference. It has nothing to do with the actual palette. I am going to scoot you out a little bit and we're gonna get talking about my thoughts. All right, so for my thoughts on my first Blend Bunny palette that I got to try, the Longing palette, I had fun playing with this palette. I really did. Now, I don't think every Blend Bunny palette's going to be for me. I definitely feel like Blend Bunny is kind of like the cool girl when it comes to indie makeup. I am just not as artistically creative as a lot of the looks that I see from Blend Bunny. Just the way that their palettes are set up definitely feels like it's more for someone who is a little bit more outside the box than myself, but still for the everyday average consumer like me, if you're like me and like neutral tones, but like to step out, dip your toes in some color every now and again, I think this is a really nice palette. As far as the formula goes, I mean, solid. I can see why everyone talks so highly about the formula. The mattes, it's not that the mattes take some getting used to, it's just that they're a little bit different from other palettes that I've experienced, where it definitely has a little bit more pigment. You have to blend it out more rather than it being a buildable matte. So it's not that that's bad, it's just different. I didn't really find a learning curve to it. Like, I was really able to adjust to that fairly quickly. So to me, like, that says something. If it was just boom pigment and I had trouble blending it out or anything like that, then I would maybe say that it wasn't my favorite formula, but I still was able to blend these all very easily. I do wish there were more shimmers in the palette. I am a shimmer girl. In fact, like, if I have one con to this palette, or just to make this my perfect palette, I would get rid of one row, which would be this row. It's just very deep and dark for me. And as much as like you can see the difference in tones for the deep shades, it's not a row I'm going to be using. If we eliminated this row, bumped this row up, I would be much happier, but that's just personal preference. It has nothing to do with the palette as a whole. $42 for this is, I think, a very fair price, considering when, you know, the Glaminatrix palette was $64, the Unearthly palettes is in the 60s. This is a lot more affordable, and I do appreciate that. Now, I do understand Unearthly and Glaminatrix specifically have more shimmers in their palettes, and that's probably affecting the price. So it's not necessarily to say that those are overpriced brands, just that this is like $20 cheaper, and I can still get some really pretty indie looks from this. I specifically loved these two shimmers the most. Now, I do still need to play with this palette more, kind of do a no pan left behind before I give my thoughts and include it in my speed rankings for all the palettes I've tried. Haven't tried this one. I didn't try this one. It's going to take me a minute to use some of these mattes here, which I'm assuming will be the same great formula, but for me, it's going to be a very light-handed application to get my uses out of those. I did use all four of these. I didn't use these two or some of the browns. I didn't want to do too much of a neutral look, but I love the layout of this. I think it's really easy. Like, you can do this quad, you can do this quad, this quad. There's a lot of looks that I can see in this palette, so I appreciate that. I'm not someone who necessarily can always see a lot of looks in a palette, and I could have done more than 3 looks. So that tells me that there is some variety, some versatility to this palette, and I very much appreciate it. I am glad this was my first Blend Bunny palette, and I held off until there was a palette that called out to me more. I think had I just tried one of their other palettes that maybe was more colorful, I probably wouldn't have repurchased from the brand because I just would have written them off. Whereas this one, I love so much. It's not a palette I'm going to reach for all the time, but it is a palette that I really like having. I love the theming. It's so beautiful in the front here. I love all of it. It's simple but beautiful, and I think that Blend Bunny did a great job. So I would definitely recommend this. I'll be picking up more Blend Bunny palettes in the future, as long as I know that they're palettes that I'll reach for and I'll use, like more color stories that just appeal to me, less rainbow palettes, which is fine. Like, everyone has different wants and needs. So I'm glad that other people get to enjoy the color stories that they want. I definitely have enough palettes to choose from, so it's not like I need more palettes in my collection, but I'm not going to just buy the Blend Bunny palettes to buy them. I'm going to wait for a color story that appeals to me, and I will be happy to use it. I really think the 3 looks turned out really pretty. I think look number 1 was my favorite, followed by 2, and then 3. This one, I don't know what it is. I think it's the shimmer for this one that I don't love, just because these 2 are more of those duochromes, and this was more of like a traditional shimmer. So I think that's why maybe I'm not fully ecstatic about this look like I was for the first two, but I would love to hear which look was your favorite down below and your thoughts on just Blend Bunny as a whole. Have you tried them? Are you going to pick up this palette? Have you already picked it up? It's not brand new, but I wanted to still do a video, give my thoughts on the palette, so that's what I did. After that, this is where I'm going to leave you all, though. I hope this video was helpful. The swatches were helpful. The looks provided some inspiration. I hope you're all having a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.